On March 5th, and to much angst to gamers, the New York Times reported that Discord was in the early stages of setting up an IPO. IPO being initial public offering, or when a company decides to go public and get listed on the stock market. Why the angst? Well, public companies are known to be in service of the shareholders, and that does not always necessarily line up with what consumers want. This IPO has major implications, and the angst is really rooted around advertising, because we all know gamers hate ads. If you are listening to this, you are probably like me and rely on Discord quite a bit. It is the social media app that I use the most because I'm a gamer. But I am not only just a gamer, I also work in the advertising industry. So while I sit on both sides of the fence here, I thought it would be interesting to pull the veil back and to do some estimates based on the public numbers that are out there. This is not me justifying advertising, but instead I want to size the amount of advertising Discord will need to generate in order to reach peer level amounts. This way you can get a glimpse of what the future may look like. So today we get to see how much advertising is needed on a publicly traded Discord. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay. So if you're into that, please subscribe. First, let us start with the very common metric in the industry that we will base our calculations off, and that is ARPU, or average revenue per user. This is basically the revenue generated in a certain time period divided by the total number of users in the same time period. So for example, Meta, aka Facebook, had a revenue of $48.385 billion in Q4 of 2024 and had 3.35 billion users. So they had an ARPU of $14.44. The issue here is that Meta is one of the best in the business, so this may be very high. When we look across other public peers in the industry, we get an idea of the range. What is the best or worst case scenario for Discord? This range is important because we have to remember that public companies are, well, public. They are in competition with each other, as shareholders will move money to companies that are generating more revenue or have more user growth potential, which is just potential future profits. According to Discord, they have over 200 million users. So for this exercise, we will just use a flat 200 million number. When we multiply the total number of Discord users by the ARPU of some of these other companies in the industry, we see how much revenue Discord will generate at that ARPU level. Now, this is the part of the video where I tell everyone that these numbers are directional. I will poke some holes myself, but the enemy of perfect is good. All 200 million Discord users may not actually be active, and if they are, they may not be all equally as active. So let's not boil the ocean. Work with me here because we are almost there. Now that we have the range of how much revenue is generated to reach these necessary levels of ARPU, we can get into how many ads are needed to generate this much revenue. The advertising industry frequently uses a metric called CPM, or cost per mille. It basically means how much it costs to deliver 1,000 ads. For our estimate, I use the CPM that I frequently find being used in the gaming space, and hey, what a surprise, it's basically what I see for my own videos, which is around a $5 CPM. So with that, we can get how many ads are going to be needed to generate that much revenue. This is where things get a bit wild because the number is huge. The range here is between 72 billion and 690 billion ads, or a range of 1 to 9.46 ads per day per user on average. These are estimates, of course, but I do work in the industry and I can say that these are not really wild estimates that are really reaching. Keep in mind, we used public data to make the peer set to establish the ARPU thresholds. The CPM cost model has been well established in the industry. The CPM rate I sourced from my own data set because I have a YouTube gaming channel, and we use Discord's own public user number. From there, it's just math. Now, there are some things that I want to point out that this estimate model glossed over. One, not all users are equal. Some of you are worth more in the eyes of advertisers. Remember we talked about Facebook's ARPU of $14? The ARPU in North America is closer to $60. There is a huge range in ARPUs based on region, and that is because there are different levels of interest to advertise to different nationalities. So while I used averages, it may play out differently where users in some countries may be getting squeezed more than others. The rates are also not the same per person. Kids may not be eligible to receive some ads due to legislation. So adults are worth more than children. 2, reaching a certain ARPU doesn't necessarily mean it is profitable. We will have to wait and see what their margin and costs are. Additionally, these companies are more mature, so this is what it will look like, but not look like day one of advertising. They are going to ease into it. 3, I use ARPUs by quarter from these companies, and I use Discord's total user base. The active user base is a smaller number, and it also doesn't take into account bot accounts and alts, which I mentioned to say that this estimate errs on the side of being conservative, as we are assuming all 200 million users are active. So with these caveats, and in my professional opinion as an advertiser, this is a fairly conservative estimate. Now, I could be wrong, I'm not right all the time, but I thought it would be neat to throw this out there to see how things shape up over time. Before we move on to other monetization methods, let me know your reaction below in the comments. Will this amount of advertising really bother you? Would this force you to another platform? For part 2, I thought it would be interesting to talk about Nitro, because that is another way that they generate money. Personally, subscribe to it. I have a large server myself, and I love the emoji feature, but I know a lot of people do not. If we were to assume the $99 cost of Nitro, which is the US cost, divided by the amount of revenue that is required to hit these ARPU numbers, then you see this range in subscriptions. Problem here is that Nitro prices vary quite differently by country. In some countries, it's cheaper to get Nitro. In others, it's more expensive. The user base on Discord is very international, and the distribution of these users is not very public. But this gives you an idea of what Discord would need in terms of subscriptions to avoid advertising, but I do not feel entirely comfortable with this estimate. But I did not think this video would be complete without showing this. Along with this, there are server boosts, which I'm not going to include in here, as I cannot really reasonably estimate this, but I think based on what I've shown, you can get a pretty good idea of the sheer size of revenue that would be needed to generate as much ARPU as other companies that are also publicly traded. The last part, and a short part, is I want to talk about the network economy. It's an economic system where the creation and distribution of value is heavily reliant on interconnected networks. The more interconnected people are, the more significant those connections become, and the more value there is from that. The frustrating paradox of the network economy is that users often find themselves locked into platforms they dislike. Any of you don't really want to use Meta-owned platforms, but use it because everyone else does too? Want to keep in contact with grandma and she only uses WhatsApp? I am one of these people, but I use those platforms because it's my way to stay connected to the people that I want to stay connected with. People stay on these platforms because everyone else is on these platforms, and this in turn makes the platforms more valuable. There is a stickiness to it. Discord is certainly prime for this. It essentially has the entire gamer user base locked in, and as Discord begins to monetize in result of it becoming public, it may not even matter because people are going to stay locked in. Gamers hate advertising, but gamers are not immune to learning to live with it when other options also exist. So while people may be getting ready to make a rally call to transition to Gilded or TeamSpeak, I'm a bit skeptical because we certainly saw some very public calls for deplatforming, a la with Reddit, and that was followed by record-breaking profits for Reddit. The network economy at work. While I work as an advertiser, please don't shoot the messenger. You may not want to hear this, but I certainly hope you found it interesting. I like to make these videos to help spur a discussion, and I thought this is one that was worth having. So I hope this video reaches you and you react by taking part in the discussion in the comments below and in your Discord communities. Lastly, while some of you may be enraged by this, let's also remember that we probably all love using Discord. It's a great platform, and I certainly hope the workers at Discord get paid well. But with that said, I hope they do not go overboard and squeeze us to the point where we end up begrudgingly using the platform. If you liked the video, please subscribe. I don't really cover these sort of topics as I focus mostly on sim games, but I like to dabble outside of my swim lanes sometimes. Thanks, and have a good one.